I'd like to bring up Barb Cubbler and Kate King. Kate is here with ISOS. Barb, would you like the clicker? Yep. Green arrow. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Barb Cubbler. I'm with World Travel. I think most everybody here knows me. And I also have Kate with me, with Kate King from International SOS. Want to see?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here. I look forward to meeting all of you. I'm Kate King. I'm Director of Global Travel Partnerships at International SOS. We will also have a booth or a stand tomorrow, so please come by and say hi if we don't get a chance to meet today.
So we're going to talk about travel policies and really go deep dive, because as I was listening to everybody talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, they just took everything I was going to say. And my husband said to me, because I really didn't prep this weekend too much because I had my grandkids, and he says, but isn't this what you do all day long, is talk about travel? And I'm like, I do, but yeah. And then I was just listening to everybody, I'm like, they stole my show. But anyways, all good. So I'm going to change it a little bit. We're going to really kind of take a deep dive into where your policy is today in your program. So first of all, I want to ask you just a few questions to get it kind of started. Is when was the last time you looked at your travel that it was redone? Was it 5 to 10 years ago? Raise of hands. See, there is people that will raise their hand for 5 to 10 years. 3 to 5 years ago. Wow. Or it's up to 3 years ago. It has just been redone, and 3 years. Very nice. That's great, because we had, a lot of the team's been really busy. Lisa and I oversee the account manager team, and we're really busy trying to make sure that our policies are up to date, because a lot of things have changed since the pandemic, where policies that we saw have become old and obsolete, a lot of the rules and regulations that we used to see in them. So I was also wanted to ask the team, or everybody here, is there's 3 types of policies. There's your one global policy, so the whole world is under one really control. The second would be more of a hybrid with regional nuances. And then third is there's a different policy for every region in the world. So first, how many have a one global policy that the whole world goes under? Oh, very good. Number 2 is the hybrid with regional nuances. And then a regional, there's still a lot of those out there too. So good, it's a really good mix then of the group of where everybody stands today. So we're going to kind of go through where we are with policies today. And when was the last time you looked at it? Whether it's you that go through the policies, or is it your HR department, or who writes your policies? And really, I think it was Lavonda had said, do you actually go over it with other people in the company? Or is that one, HR doing it for everybody and not really checking in with everybody? So some of the things we want to look at is you really want to refresh your policy. Even if you have done it in the past 2 years, 3 years, really go through it. Is it concise? So today we look at it as a team. We go through policies all the time, and we read through it, and we see that you don't even mention the TMC you're supposed to be booking through, or the online booking tool. So it's really important to state on there that World Travel is our TMC. You got to call World Travel and put our phone number in that, embed a link, because they'll say, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to book through World Travel. Well, who else did you think you were supposed to be booking through? Also, on the online booking tool, today, we're going to talk a little bit about leakage too in your program, but put in there where you expect them to be booking. Online is your online booking tool, whether it's Concur or it's a different online booking tool. So make sure you're clear and concise of what you want them to be able to see. So many times it's really loose, and you want to, they're going to take what you're telling them as long as it's in writing. Communicate. A lot of times we see the policy's been written, and that's it. It doesn't go anywhere else. So it's really important for you to sign off, have your employees sign off on it. Do you ever send it out to everybody and acknowledge that they have read it? So that way, if they do break the policy, they're not coming back to you and saying, oh, I didn't see that in the policy. Well, you signed off on it, so you read it. That's really important. Onboarding. You know, if they're going to travel, have them read the policy. Again, acknowledge it. You know, I have one client, she's not here today, but she actually quizzes them. Anybody who's going to travel, they take a test. And that way she knows that then once they pass the test, she knows who she is, her name's Heather. She will, once they pass the test, they get their corporate card. So that is how determined she is that she is going to make sure everybody knows how much time she invested in her travel policy. Rules for, you know, air, car, and hotel. If you have preferred airlines, do you have it written out? Are you writing in that you have a preferred with United, Delta, American? Make sure you have that written into your policy. Also, hotels. So often we see in your hotel program where you write in that it's a moderate hotel. You can stay at a moderate hotel. What I think of a moderate hotel could be the Ritz-Carlton, where Kate could think it's a Super 8. So it really depends on on what you want to put out there. So if it is a moderate hotel, spell it out. Fairfield Inn, Hampton Inn, Courtyard. Write exactly what you're looking for in that policy, because that's really important for your travelers. Again, there's no fine line. You now have said, you set the stage, this is what you to be booking at. Also, frequently review your policy. As I think it was Barb said and Lisa said, policies, the world's changing. It is really changing every day. There's something new going on. So it's really important that it's being reviewed. And I think it was Lavonda said is, you've got to get champions throughout the world. So all your different regions, be their champion. Have everybody read the policy, agree to the policy. And if it's in different languages, you need to make sure that it's in the languages that everybody speaks, that it's not all in English or all in Spanish, that it is written for everybody. If you are, when you are writing your global, you also want to make sure you're making, you're putting in there for invoicing, if you need to have invoicing for certain payments. All of those things need to be written out so that the traveler knows exactly what they are supposed to do from the time they are handed that corporate card or told they have to go visit their client. They get on that plane and they know exactly where they're supposed to stay, where they are booking in advance. Are they, do they need to book their tickets 14 days in advance? That's still out there. We still see that written in there that you need to book advance. Don't book last minute. So those are some of the things that you want to look at. And then also when you're building it is your sustainability. We are seeing more and more of outside the United States is really looking for carbon type reporting. What do they need for their sustainability? So that needs to be written in there as well, and there are guidelines that your company has that is for sustainability. There's also written on here cabin class rules. So are you able to purchase your up fares and you're able to buy the economy plus, or you're allowed to do all of that? Everything has to be written in that policy, because otherwise you are going to have people that are going to book how they would like, and they'll take the consequences when it comes. Or they know they're going to get away with it, and they're just going to keep doing it. So it's really important, again, I know we drill that home, but you got to write it in there so that there is no fine line. One of the other things we put in here is your refueling. How many people, we have some of our car vendors back here, they just, they don't drop their car off, they drop it with an empty tank. Those are things, if you want them to refuel their car, no matter where in the world you're buying your car, refuel it before you taking it back into the area, because that does save your company money. Also written in, we talk about approval processes. There's so many different types of approval processes out there today, and how you want to do that. It got really loud all of a sudden. We have passive approvals and we have hard approvals. So if you do have an approval process today at your company, also please write that in there. Who gets the approval, so they understand their approval processes. When we have an HR feed coming in to World Travel, we can write it from that HR feed on who does the approvals. So that, again, just write it out as part of your policy that is written as approvals. And then your payment method, how you expect them to pay, and that is around the world. How do you expect them to pay for their air? How do you expect them to pay for their car and hotels, or any type of ground transportation that they have? Just be specific. And again, if you have regional nuances throughout, you have a hybrid, If you're going to be doing something different in Europe and Mexico versus the United States, just make sure on those different countries you break it out by country where those nuances come in and the changes that you have. Because again, all of that is really important. Is there anybody in here who has put something into their policy that is different than what you've seen out there that you would like to share with anybody? Especially those that are the global policies. Or should I put in, so for your ones that raised their hand for global policy, is there anything that you've done differently to really promote them booking through the agencies that you ask them to book through? Or do you still have a lot of leakage? Okay, so they're pretty standard. Nope, that's okay. So no problem. And then also we did put on here bleisure, because that has become very popular. And if you don't know what bleisure is, that's blending your business with your leisure. And if you do allow it, put it in there, what your guidelines are for the bleisure. That is also part of it. So before we go into travel policy, is there any questions or anybody have anything before we go on? And then we're going to go into leakage. Kim.
Hi, Barb. I was just going to make a comment that for some of our customers, they prefer to do a travel policy and separate document that's a travel procedure. I think psychologically, or maybe there is a lot of red tape, it's more difficult sometimes to change or update a policy, whereas a procedure is more of a living document. So I don't know if anyone does that, but it seems to work quite well.
Well, that's
can change pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because a procedure would be if you're going to do an update and you want to get that out to so it's not sitting in the archive somewhere. It is then being redone. Or if it's just one part of your policy that's being changed, that could be sent out in a communication as a procedure saying, don't forget to book through World Travel, or don't forget to book, we have a new hotel added to our program. Those are things you just want to get out to your team. And one of the things that we do see on our side too is when you're looking at communicating it. Not only with the new hires coming in or just across the board, but also send out frequently asked questions. Over the past 3 weeks, my team has had like 5 clients that have asked us to put together a frequently asked question document for them. And that is kind of to what Kim was saying, was putting it into the policy, but just breaking it down for them. What are they allowed to do? And it's a 2-page document that we've done, talking about a little bit on Concur, but also about booking, in the United States, but also one we did for a global. So it is just a few frequently asked questions, but not going through that 50-page travel policy that sometimes you have. Also just on, I think it was Lavonda had mentioned, also, the cultural sensitivities. So you do want to make sure that in those different regions around the world that you do take culture into consideration as you're writing your policy, and also a global communication, whether, again, if it's regionally, you want to just have some changes in one particular country, you might want to get that out. And then we go into the leakage and how much is being taken is not coming through the program. And we can't stress that enough, as Lisa and Lavonda had mentioned, and Barb, is data is king, and you don't have the data if you're not booking through the same sources throughout the world. So in today's world, and we're going to have Kate's going to talk a lot about risk management and why it's so important, but not only for safety and security, but for us to be able to go back and renegotiate your airline programs, your hotel programs. We need you to be booking through one TMC throughout the world, so that we can be able to pull all of that, be able to pull those reports and look at them and measure, how are you doing? Can we get you a better global contract around the world on United Airlines or any of the other airlines? Can we work on the hotel vendors around the world? So those are really important for you to look at when the leakage happens. We see a lot on hotel side. We have a very low hotel attachment, which Pam Zager will say, we hound it all the time to our account managers and our ops team, is sell your hotels when they're calling in, make sure they're booking their hotels through the program. And that, again, goes back to that policy. You need to make sure you're stating that they have to book their hotels through us. They think that they're finding something better on Marriott.com or through Hilton, but really if it's in our program, and we have a really good program with our One Global program, hotel program around the world. So we do really want you to push your hotels as much as possible. And I know, and I won't go into Kate's, is all that is coming down to duty of care. And identifying where the leakage is. But also you want to monitor for gaps. Where in your program are you seeing gaps today? Is it through the data that you're looking at? Is it through the airline side, or is it on the car rental side? But again, a lot of times it's on the hotel. So address the root cause of where the leakage is. Educate and engage your travelers. So if it is hotel, we can help you. We can help you write communications out to your masses and help them why it's so important to book. And we can even write it so that it's coming from somebody higher in your company and just have them sign off on it. We've done some for CEOs, CFOs. We wrote it for them, so all they had to do was really put their signature on it, and they sent it out, because that's going to have a lot more impact than Barb Cubbler is going to have. So it's important for to have your senior leadership buy into exactly what you want them to do. Also engage your senior leaders. So we have a lot of reports, and our account managers run quarterly reviews for you, and they show you where your gaps are. But get in front of your senior leadership, and I think that was again what Lavonda and Lisa had talked about, was you need to take that to your senior leadership, show them is, hey, I know we spend $10 million here in this region, but we're only getting $5 million. I need your assistance, and we need your championship to champion this to get this moving in the right direction for us. You'll be surprised if you really get them to help you and engage in your program, you can move it forward. And I know I can't say it any better than what Karen did, Kuhar, on the project management side. We do catch a lot of it during our implementations. And I think she stepped out, but she did that really beautifully on how we see those gaps while we're talking to you and implementing a program. Yeah.
I think, can we ask how many people measure leakage today? I think this is something that people find maybe hard, but it's a high value item. So maybe there are some suggestions of how they do it today if anyone is doing it successfully. Hands up, who's measuring?
Okay, so we know everybody has hotel leakage in your program. Everyone has hotels. So how do you address your hotel leakage today? Kim?
It's not really very scientific or data-based, but from a review perspective, we work closely hand in hand with T&E. Our travel policy, we're one of those companies that has a policy and a procedure. Thank you. Has a policy and a procedure that are separate for the very reasons that Kim mentioned, and it works well for us. But finance owns our policy. My team, Jen and I, simply manage and guide through the policy. But what we have had start happening is that T&E is starting not to reimburse for things that are booked outside of policy. And so there's not a lot of data around that yet, but they're starting to send us notes and say, hey, what is this situation here? And we're like, oh yeah, no, and explain what the issues are. But when you tell somebody they're not going to get paid back because they're booking out of policy, that they pay attention.
Does anybody else do that? Very good. There's a couple of head nods there that they don't pay back. Is that for air and hotel?
More so hotel.
Okay.
Air.
So how do you catch them then? So Barb Cubbler did not book her hotel through the proper channels. So they get an email? Like, what is your protocol?
So they'll get the reminder, right? The friendly reminder, by the way, we noticed your hotel daily rate is a little bit out of our range. Did you go through your manager? Did you book the right hotel? Did you book a preferred hotel? Give them the chance. Maybe they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have like a 3
is going to be getting approval for their travel through their manager. So
Right.
if the manager is letting you go off the reservation, then they're going to be held accountable as well.
That's good. Because we see, we have a couple of clients that actually measure off of departments too, to see where they're coming in, kind of like that piece. So if they know that how many salespeople they have in each of their organizations, they can measure and say, well, here's my spend, but I'm off on it, and I have one client that puts parameters in, booking their preferred airlines. Are they all booking their preferred airlines? Is their online adoption up? Is their hotel program supposed to be where it is at? We do have messaging on our online booking tool, and also with the agents. So if you book book an air with no hotel, they can get a communication email stating, we see you booked your air, but you didn't book your hotel. So that is one way to capture it, but it's to your point then, is the manager still signing off on it, which typically they are still signing off on it. So holding them accountable is very helpful too, because a couple of times they have to pay that. They're not going to be very happy about having to do it. Anybody else have anything on that piece? Tracy, you're thinking over there.
It's a very manual process, because I have people that will not book their hotel when they book their air because they're not sure where they need to stay. So they'll get a message that says, hey, I noticed you didn't, and then they'll go in and they'll book their hotel, but guess what? I didn't know I was supposed to add it to my existing air reservation, so now it's a separate. So it's a very manual. I haven't figured out a way to perfect how to truly,
We find that too, because that is when we run our reports, you'll see those and then you go back and you look and see, okay, well, I did see that on another record, a separate P&R. But the problem you have with that, which you call and cancel your air, that hotel's out there, and if they didn't call and say you canceled your hotel, you now have a hotel no-show out there, which causes another, issue. So again, it's educating your travelers. We really can't stress that more. The importance of when you're building your policy is the communication, getting it out there, letting them know, just really defining what you want them to do is really important. I think that is the key, is the communication, because there's a lot of policies that we read that are very loose and very aren't really with a direction. So it is important. If you ever need help, let us know, because that's our account management team. They are all over here, sitting at almost every table. They can help you and guide you through building a policy. We also have a policy compliance tool that can also help build your policy for you. So if you do want to start over, or you just want to put some added value to it, go in and play around with it. Your account manager can help you through that process and take a look at it. So now we want to go into talking about the travel risk today. We live in a totally different world than we did a few years ago, and Kate is going to take us down that journey.
Thank you. Yes, I will. And thanks for the setup too, because travel policy is a very good jumping off point to start talking about travel risk and travel risk management. So I'm also going to start with a question. I'm just curious if people here, raise your hand maybe if you know the difference between travel policy and travel risk policy. A few people, thank you. Maybe a few more shy people that do know but aren't raising their hand. I'm not going to pick you and be like, tell the audience what the definition is, by the way, which is a fair concern. But so the difference, you all know travel policy. Travel risk policy covers some of the covers elements that aren't included in the travel policy, things that are related to risk and health and safety, such as any pre-trip approvals or trip approvals for safety reasons, elements related to booking policy but that are related to safety. Sometimes this is kind of a blurred one, could be in either maybe, but number of people traveling together, or approved airlines or hotels for safety reasons. It also will cover things like what somebody needs to do before traveling, if there's training that needs to happen, if there's vaccinations that need to happen, sometimes destination risk assessments, sometimes health checks, even what happens after the trip if you return home from certain destinations. Do you need to get a health checkup, or if you have symptoms of an illness after certain destinations? So all that kind of stuff. Almost always two separate documents. There's nothing really financial in the travel risk policy. Does anyone know, and you may not know, which is totally fair, but does anyone know if your company has both? Yeah?
So, sorry, so we have a very robust, duty of care. We utilize, we have an internal security and intelligence department. We use providers similar to International SOS. We get risk intelligence on everything. We have AVAC approval. So we don't have a formal risk assessment policy, but we do a great deal and work hand in hand with our security team and the partners that data feeds through to provide, as we expand into more global markets, to provide safety and security evacuation from, we have a company that was headquartered in Tel Aviv. So we had to evacuate people from that country. There was a whole risk plan associated with that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so that's the end of the quiz, so everybody can relax.
I have one. Did somebody else
Oh,
raise
yeah.
their hand? I thought I saw somebody else.
All right. So here on this slide, these are a few examples of considerations when implementing a global travel risk program. So the first one, geopolitical and regulatory. This refers to just monitoring the geopolitical and regulatory environment to be aware of changes. Things are very, very dynamic. So anything that's happening that's going to affect your employees' travel, and also in having a source, having the means to get information, credible, reliable information on a real-time basis that you can use to make decisions about trip approvals. And a point I wanted to make. Yeah, so having that information that also will allow an organization to make sort of a decision-making framework, knowing what's happening. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. When the conflict started between Ukraine and Russia, we obviously evacuating clients from Ukraine, but in addition to that, we have a lot of clients that operate in neighboring countries, and their immediate concern was, what do I do if Poland is attacked or Belarus, and we needing to have a plan in place? What will happen if they do need to evacuate? What that evacuation is going to look like, and also how will they know when it's time to activate that plan? Because you don't have a lot of time. So putting together sort of, this is our risk tolerance. These are our employees that work as essential or non-essential. What are going to be those triggers, our threshold to sort of pull the trigger on that evacuation plan? If that makes sense. One example of things that people were putting together, we help our clients with these plans, obviously, but just even simple as having a manifest of all of your local employees to know what passports they hold, what visas they hold. Sometimes, depending on the business you're in, 50% of your local employees could be expats. So if you do need to do an evacuation, it gets very complicated. This one can go here, this one can't go here, this one can't travel through this country. You know this, you guys deal with this every day. But yeah, doing that kind of thing in advance. Health and safety, when we talk about health and safety, it's sort of considering where the environment that your employees are going to be working in. If they're traveling away from home for work, maybe they're going to be working somewhere where the standard of medical care is lower than what they're used to, or maybe the environment itself. If you're in oil and gas, you have people working on an offshore rig or in an underground mine, they will be exposed to different types of health and safety risks. So questions you might want to ask yourself are, what kind of first aid or medical support are we going to have on site, or transportation to medical care should something happen. If the assignment's going to be long term, you might want to consider, do they need to have health checks? Do you want your people to have health checks before they're deployed, to rule out any sort of pre-existing conditions that could be exacerbated by the environment? Destination profile, this is a big one. This could be like 10 separate categories, but this is sort of also what some people call risk rating, taking a look at a whole range of different factors in a destination, things like access to medical care, access to clean water, insect-borne disease, things like crime, transportation safety, natural disasters, and kind of coming up with an overall rating that allows you to make trip approval decisions and allows you to sort of put in place this is kind of going back to policy, what mitigation steps people need to take. If you're going to these countries, you have to have a vaccine. If you're going to be self-driving in these countries, you need to have some training. Or if you're going somewhere with a high level of petty crime, you need to have a certain type of traveler training, those kind of things. Also, destination profile, going back to what we were talking about before about having those escalation plans in place. Knowing the profile of the destination allows you to sort of plan that way. If you have operations in Bahamas, you're going to need a hurricane plan. If you only have offices in Toronto and London, you don't need to worry about that. So just the sort of the sense that every destination is different. What one company needs to have for their risk management plan might be totally different than someone else's. And then traveler profile, that's kind of the last pillar, if you will. And this just refers to the fact that it's very hard to just have a very static risk rating for one country, because each of your employees is an individual with different characteristics, and so that are going to intersect with the threats in that location to sort of determine the risk. Risk is going to be different for one person than another. Give you an example. If you have a CEO of a prominent company traveling to China, they're going to have to take a lot of care with the devices and the work documents that they're bringing into the country, probably more so maybe than a mid-level employee at a smaller company or a tourist. They may also need to be prepped or briefed on how to deal with maybe extensive questioning at immigration. One more example I'll give you is a traveler who's a member of the LGBTQ+ community, and then you have a cisgender traveler. They're both going to Saudi Arabia. The risk is very different. So, and then, do you have the clicker, Barb?
Yep.
Thank you. So that's not an exhaustive list, but I hope it kind of just gives a sense of some of the considerations. A lot of you are probably very familiar with this. You've either done this exercise or maybe you've consulted with your security team on these kind of exercise. Here we're going to move on a little bit to some of the elements that comprise a travel risk management program, some of the tools and resources that are kind of a baseline standard of what you would want to have in place when you have employees traveling for work. And the first one is real-time risk monitoring. So this, things change so quickly. I feel like they change more faster than they used to. I don't know if that's perception, but one thing that's definitely true is the number of incidents, the number, or in security they call it polycrisis, the number of things that are happening right now seem to be overlapping. They are overlapping more than they used to be. So it's really important to have access to sort of a real-time source of really good, credible information that you can trust and that you can use to support your decision making. One more point I wanted to make here. Yeah, I think just the real-timeness of that information, going back to the point I made about how risk isn't static. So you have the person who's traveling is going to impact the situation, but also what's happening in the destination. I think gone are the days of that static risk rating. Now you can have, depending on a weather incident or sort of political protest is another good example that can make the risk of a destination really go up and down. I mean, I'm Canadian, and I don't think that I ever was familiar with evacuating a lot of people from Canada until a couple of years ago, but our forest fires that we've always had have gone to the next level now. And International SOS evacuates people from one territory in Canada to another, which is unheard of to me in my 45 years, but that's the new reality. And even, protests are a good example. We've had a lot of cases last year in London, England, where we were helping employees due to effects from political protests, which is new. So just to say that having that real-time information, not relying on, I know this country's medium, this country's high, this country's low. And then the next point, I'm going to go a little bit off order here, sorry. So reduce exposure is the fourth one. I'm bringing that up to the second one I want to talk about because I think it's really important. We always want to try to reduce risk, avoid risk before jumping into responding to something gone really wrong. And so again, having information, having that detailed analysis from a provider that you trust allows you to make decisions to be able to just reduce your exposure or avoid. Anytime you put on a mask on a plane or get a vaccination or decide to take a taxi instead of walking down the street, you're reducing your exposure. Other examples using that intelligence that you have about a destination are policy decisions like whether you need to take a taxi, whether you can self-drive, whether you can take public transit, or even, depending on where you're going, the use of a driver or police escort or armored cars. Those are all ways to reduce your exposure. Another example is potentially avoiding traveling at a certain time, switching to a virtual meeting. If you think there's a lot of risk associated with sending people into another country, ask yourself, is that meeting necessary? Can it be done virtually? Can it be postponed? Or evacuate once things start to escalate. And this is an interesting point that I wanted to make, because this is something I wouldn't have thought of until I started working at International SOS. But I've been surprised to learn that almost all of the major political escalations that we've supported, there's been a window right at the beginning where people have been able to self-evacuate, going to the airport, getting a commercial flight before the airport shut down. Very hard to do without a professional level of intelligence and forecasting. So whether that's something that you have internally through your corporate security team or whether it's something you outsource, I think that's a really good example of avoiding that exposure, having information in advance to be able to make a decision while you have that window of time. And then moving on to emergency response protocols. Do your travelers and your managers know what to do in an emergency? If you use a provider like International SOS or one of our peers, do all your employees know about it? Do they know to call them? I love the test that you mentioned, like doing it, whoever said that about testing the employees, your friend. I think it's a great idea. I've never heard of that before, but making sure that people know. People don't always listen, maybe, or they do, and then they panic, right? Like when you're in a stressful situation, you don't remember. I was talking with a buyer last week who was telling me a story about they had an employee that got stuck in a flood in Thailand, and they called their boss back in Canada. Do you think that their VP of sales knew what to do? Right, and luckily for them, luckily for that organization, the person was okay. They got out of it some way or another, but that was the turning point for them. That's why we were having this conversation at that point in time, because they realized that next time they might not be so lucky, and they wanted to have a plan in place before.
Yeah, so again, by writing that down and putting it in there, this is who you call.
Exactly.
If that happens, needs to be written into, whether it's into a risk part of your agreement or just into the policy itself.
Yeah, I think it's super important, and doing things, just putting things in front of people however you do it, whether it's having an app that's automatically downloaded on their phone, whether it's pinging reminders. And so, I mean, if any of you are in the same position as my prospect last week and you're sort of looking at enhancing your duty of care program, it's a great question to ask potential providers that you're meeting with. What would you have done in that situation? How would you have supported? What would you do if you had one of my employees who was stuck in a hospital in Vietnam and they wouldn't release him and the hospital didn't speak English? What would you do if one of my employees was stuck up a mountain after a monsoon and there was a widespread power outage and all you had was a pin drop? It's not a bad idea to sort of run through some of these potential scenarios internally, if you're in your organization too. I'm digressing, but this is an important point here. I find that a lot of travel managers, when it comes to this topic, are in a position where you see something, you see a gap, and you're sometimes raising the flag to a security team who maybe has something in place that is good and doesn't want to change it. And I do talk to a lot of travel managers who are like, help me build a business case. So some of those scenarios, some of those case studies can be a good place to start. Okay, well, let's just talk through it. What would happen? And maybe there's an answer, and then, do all of our employees know that? But also with vendors, when you're meeting with vendors. And then I think vendor contingency support is the last point I wanted to make, which is just, I think I already did, just speaking about, I think the last point is when you're kind of going through these, if any of you are in that position, and you're evaluating, what do we want to do in-house versus what do we want to outsource? I hope what I've provided today is kind of a good checklist of some ideas of these are the things that we need to consider. It's not exhaustive. If you do want sort of a complete list or a source to kind of help with doing a self-assessment on your travel risk program, a lot of you are probably familiar, but the International Standards Organization put out a really good document in 2021 called ISO 31030, Travel Risk recruitment guidance for organizations, and that's a very comprehensive sort of checklist for putting together a strong program.
So we hope you found this to be really helpful for you. So not just writing your policy, but also having your corporate security and your risk management in there as well, and having them sign off. I think is really, it's again, having your key stakeholders in the company sign off on what your plans are, whether it's the travel policy around the globe or it's the security piece. It is really important that you have champions in your program and your company to help you, because you're not in this alone, because it's not one person who's going to own a travel policy. It is the, it's everybody really needs to take onus into it for security and for cost savings and overall the corporate program.
These are just QR codes you're welcome to scan if you want. The first one is a sort of a mini self-assessment, self-risk assessment that we have on our website that's free. And the second one is just more information about International SOS. But as I mentioned, we'll have a booth tomorrow too, so feel free to come by.
So we have a few minutes. Any questions for Kate or I?
Can I ask one of the audience again? Obviously, the theme this afternoon has been very much about the importance of data, in terms of managing the project, the travel program, ensuring you're maximising your travel spend through leveraging your preferred suppliers, your policy, managing, mandating and mitigating leakage. And now we've touched on risk. How many of our global customers, we talk, very much about post-trip data. How many of our customers are actually using pre-trip data to facilitate a lot of this? Any? Because obviously it's a lot easier to manage it pre-event. Obviously, a lot of the data helps you sort of, influence and put processes in place following, but certainly from a risk perspective, pre-trip data is so more powerful.
Yeah, because if you are a customer of ours, when there is a risk that's associated today, we do run reports. Our team can run Where Are My Traveler reports, so that if we do know that if there was a plane crash or there was another incident happened, again, that is all data that's needed to know, so you know where your people are for security purposes and just for the well-being of your travelers who, everything is about them, making sure they get from point A to point B and back.
Another thing that some of our clients do, to your point, is they ask us, and we have these automated, but an organization will have a set list of destinations. They might use our sort of high-risk country list, or they might have their own and say, can you please send me a report every time somebody books a trip to one of these countries? Or can you send me a report every week that shows the trips that are booked to those countries? And maybe different people do different things with it. In some cases, if it's just the really high risk, they take those travelers and they pull them and they give them a briefing. Or they want to know the reason of their trip if it's not approved. But it's, again, going back to that, it's much easier to deal with it before. And it's a good sort of compromise, because we do have a lot of clients that struggle with, do we want a pre-trip approval before booking when it's related to risk? And there's a lot of pushback often from the business because it slows things down. And so this is a good compromise. No, go ahead and book, but then they will review the trips before they travel. So if there's something serious where they need to step in, then they can catch it.
We have some, that are on the blacklist that those countries need sometimes sea-level approval, along with that security, just to making sure they understand the risk that they have by going into there, and then we can set all of that up. All of our partners around the world can set that up as a approval process that would have to come through. And then also for the medium type of countries, we also have, you may have just your, a senior manager approval, and then for other countries, just your normal approval processes. But that's really important today, just to know where everybody is. I think we have like 2 minutes left. Any other questions? Hey, Tammy.
We use International SOS, and we've come up with a report that's all of our trips. And it's been very helpful. For example, I get a report every day, so when CrowdStrike hit and nobody had internet to be able to log in to go to International SOS, I was able to look on my phone and look at my last all trips report, find out who was traveling, where they were traveling. So, I mean, I know high-risk places are also good to look at too, but just for daily, incidents that happen, or if there's a shooting outside of a hotel and I don't have my computer, I can go in really quickly and find out, who is staying at this hotel, and be able to provide that to our risk team. So there's other reports too that International SOS provides, which are very helpful to be able to
Yeah, that's a great
use to
point.
find your people. So.
Thanks, Tammy. Anybody else? Oh.
Quick question for me, actually, to the, anybody else got me?
Yeah, that's okay.
Quick question for me, to the travel line in the room as well. We're talking about monitoring risk to countries or locations. Do you monitor risk on your specific travellers in terms of how many travellers are staying in a hotel together, especially if they're your execs, or if they're all getting on the same aircraft? And do you manage that? Do you find that difficult to manage? In a manual process point of view?
We try, but sometimes you get pushback from that.
Yeah.
We're going on this trip together, we're getting on this plane together.
Yeah. Okay.
We do a really big trip for one of our customers, and they bring everybody to their entire company, and they do 2 waves. Pam knows who I'm talking about. And they bring their nannies, they bring everybody, and they pick destinations that there isn't many people that you can't do that. This year they did Cancun throughout the world. Everybody came in from around the world, and it was really difficult trying to find, there's only so many planes in the air that are going to that destination at that time. So that's really important. I think there was somebody in the back.
I'm interested in, so our organization, I think we do a pretty good job of getting, our communications out. We do like an annual staff certification of our travel policy, where staff have to attest that they read it, they understand their obligations, yada, yada. But it's like one of those things, you can lead a horse to water, but he can't make it drink. So, I will do this, say, certification in December, like January 5th, someone's emailing me, say, hey, Margie, where's our, air class of travel rules? And I'll be like, you just certified not 2 weeks ago that you read our travel policy. So the idea of a test is great, but I know that wouldn't fly in our organization. So is there any other ways that people use, that organizations use to, know that our staff are actually reading what we're putting out there?
Do you have to have them sign off on it? We have a lot of customers that just make them at least sign off of it. Even at World Travel, we have to sign off on our travel policy. When we have something new has entered into our policy, we all have to sign it. And we know a lot of our customers have the same, that it's just that you get it. And if something's been changed, just like you said, you might make one change on it. It goes to those travelers. So if it's 1,000, 2,000 travelers, they have to at least sign off on it. So that's that they now, well, you should have read it. You signed off on it. And if you just put your hand, John Hancock on it, then you just,
We do it all through like Microsoft Forms. So I'll put it's literally they annually certify that they've actually read the policy.
They read it.
And then we do quarterly policy updates that go out on our intranet. So if there's anything that, important that they need to know during the course of the year, it's highlighted on our, our intranet with like a need to know that goes out to all staff. But I get very frustrated at like all the communications I put out there, and I know very little people actually read them.
So Barb had mentioned, a portal, is part of, have one portal that would have that in there, and then, for them to really, what you're trying to drive home on that piece of that policy, that might be something too that might be able to.
I did make a note of that, almost like to create some kind of cheat sheet with our, like most used.
Right, because if you have
policy
something out there,
components.
we do see sometimes our clients will put things in their Concur online booking tool. So if they did make a change to their policy, that they know that at least getting, maybe if they have 80% of those travelers will see something and flash that they have a change in their policy on the air side or car or hotel, or something you want to get driven across. Now, whether they read it again, but at least you're putting it
in the portal. You'll have your company notes, but then it's like you'd have to like click to like see in the company notes.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Just go right to booking travel. So I find that one of my most frustrating things as a travel manager is people actually,
reading
what you put out there.
Does anybody else have any ideas that you do at your company? Lisa?
one of my clients had an approval process, and they would require a traveler that was traveling to a mid or high risk country to submit a request internally. And before they would approve it, the traveler had to answer like 5 basic questions. You know, what do you do? What would you do if you had a medical emergency outside of the country? Just 5 basic questions. At least it made them think about what they would do. It's just an idea. I'm not sure how effective it would be with no
That's good.
approval process.
Thanks, Lise. Anything else? I could talk about policy all day long. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really, really curious, how many buyers in the room have risk management departments, and how many, well, let's start with that. How many of you have risk management departments that you work with? Hands high. Okay, good number. And then how many of you are left to kind of figure that out for your company? Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I think it's, you know, sometimes a hard but high value thing. So hopefully you've been able to use your matrix and add some things to that, not to add to your workload, but those are really, really important things so that you're not trying to figure it out when something does happen. We are going to take a break. So we're going to take a break to 3:10, and then we'll come back and talk about execution, and some of those folks